Good morning. Welcome to the wake up call. I think y'all can hear me now. This is one of those mornings where we didn't have the sound go out in the middle of the night. Happy Friday, James. What's up, Warren, Victoria, Karen, Warren Harding, the president? What's up, President? I really think your username should be President Harding. And if I was growing up with you, I would just call you President. What's up, Damon and Allison? How y'all doing this morning? Um, Welcome to another episode of the Wake Up Call. We do this every Friday for the newcomers. Hey, Carmelita. I'm sorry, I have a script. Carmelita gave me a script. Hello, sister Carmelita. What's up, KJ? Ty, how you doing? Lisa AH. I feel like I don't know. I know everybody here is not black, so um, you might not know that there's a black saying, Jacqueline, that if you walk into a room with somebody and you don't say hello or good morning, they'll say, I didn't sleep with you last night. So you have to speak when you walk into a room. And essentially, this is a virtual room. What's up, Avani? And Sammy D from East Tennessee. I feel like Sammy D is a rap name. Again, I don't know why I'm on this nickname thing this morning. Growing up, my nickname was my nickname was Mikey. And then when I got to high school, I went to this summer camp, and this dude from New York started calling me Rickety, like Rickety Rocket, and then that became my name. So if you know my high school friends, you'll hear a lot of them call me Rickety. Shout out to Bobby, shout out to DeHaven, Gino. But if you know somebody who knows me from a child, I think it's hard for people who grew up with me to not call me Mikey. I don't mind. Usually when I'm in a meeting and people say, "Hey, should I call you Mike or Michael?" I'm like, I genuinely don't care. People call me either one. But you have to know me before I was 12 to call me Mikey. What's up, Jeremy, my cousin? Scott Williams and Tiffany, what's going on? Jeremy, my cousin, is one of the videographers for Contraband Camp. You know, so I don't know if we talked about this yet, but when Contraband Camp started, we launched on the day that I'm about to say Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump was inaugurated, and we had this big get together here. And so we still have footage of like this huge dinner party. And the conversation is already edited. I'm trying to really decide when to release it. But it's Joy Reid, it's Tiffany Cross, it's Wes Lowry, it's Ellie Mastal, it's Latasha Brown, it's Aaron Haynes. It's a bunch of us sitting around the table. Jason Johnson, just talking about everything from Luther Vandross to Donald Trump to raising children. So we're gonna release that soon. Maybe one day next week. Who knows? Um, And I'm going to go ahead and don't forget to put your questions in the chat if you have anything y'all want to talk about. It doesn't have to be a question. It's like, let's talk about blah, blah, blah. Because I really come on here literally without like syllabus or a outline or questions or anything that we want to talk about. But some of y'all do send questions in advance. Hello, Elaine. One of the questions was one of the suggestions was that we should start off every episode of the Wake Up Call, the Friday show, with a story, one of the stories from growing up. And I don't like, there are too many. There's some in the book. I gave y'all one yesterday, right? The story about when the boo hag used to ride Carmelita. Um, I didn't put in that story that when Carmelita used to sleep with me, right? So Carmelita was like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5. My mom got her a pair of patent leather church shoes. Y'all know what church shoes are. Just church shoes. like those old Puritan one strap buckle shoes, but hers were patent leather. Kamala loves those shoes so much. So Kamala used to have to sleep with me with the shoes on. She wouldn't take them off when she went to bed, right? So she would have to sleep on my back in a pair of patent leather church shoes. And it was hell. So we really had to get that get that out. Oh, somebody said we should talk about Harlow going blacker. Oh, that's KJ from Charleston. KJ Kearney is from Charleston. He is a Gullah Geechee food expert, and he knows that the hag is real. The boo hag is real. The hag, you might have experienced the hag riding you. I don't know what y'all call it in y'all culture. Like in South Carolina, we call it the boo hag or the hag. And when the hag riding you, um, they will sit on your chest and you'll wake up and the hag be riding you. You can't speak, you can't move. That's when the hag is riding you. And they say the hag uses, like if you slob, or maybe somebody just told me this, right? But I think I read it somewhere too, that if you like slob in your sleep, that makes the hag more likely to ride you because the hag your spit as the reins for when they ride you to hold on. And so the hag riding you is real. They say it's related to explaining away sleep paralysis. But trust me, like I've been ridden by the boo hag a couple times. They say you got if you call on Jesus enough, the hag will get off you. But if somebody in the room is awake, the hag won't even come in. So that's the boo hag. Somebody asked about Jack Harlow going black, or Pat Riley Sanderson asked that. And I don't know if y'all saw this. So we wrote about it. I wish I could reveal, and I don't know, I don't have permission to reveal who wrote that article because he goes by the low end theorist. But it's a pretty well known writer who writes under that name because the low end theorist. And maybe one day we'll reveal that. But in the article, if you haven't seen it, Jack Harlow, who's a rapper, a white rapper from I think Kentucky, he has a R&B slash rap album coming out. Oh, well, that's out now. And he was doing an interview with the New York Times, and he said they asked him about, you know, how people like Post Malone and Miley Cyrus, they delve into black music, and then when they get really big, they just go to white music. They just get out. And they asked if that was appealing to him, and he says, "Well, I arguably went blacker, right?" And he explained the reasons why because he likes black music, which I like. So there's a thin line that people who are white who make black music have to toe because on one hand, right, you got to acknowledge that, yeah, I know I'm making black music. Technically, everybody you've ever heard, unless you listen to like polka or, you know, classical music, everybody you listen to makes black music. Jazz is black music, rock and roll is black music. Um, it's all black music. But he was specifically talking about the rap and the R&B genre. Again, going back to history, that category used to be called race music until like the 1940s. So, and then and after 1940, it was called the black music category, the black music chart. So Billboard had a race music chart, then they changed it to the black music chart. And it wasn't until like recently, like the 2000s, that it became the hip hop slash R&B chart. Ralph Cooper says the album is not fire and it ain't extra black. He really is whipped over a sister named Monica. No, Ralph, he's not whipped over a sister named Monica. So if y'all don't know this, and there's this big debate about this. So the reason that the album is named Monica is that there's an old joke by this, I think it's an Asian comedian, and it went viral, like, at the beginning of Twitter, and the Asian comedian was saying that he moved here and he started hanging out with all black people, and he didn't realize he thought that all black people were named Monica because they would see each other and say, "What's up, my what's up, Monica? What's up, my nigga?" They were saying my nigga, and he thought they were saying Monica, so he thought all black people when he first moved here were named Monica, and because he was like, "That's my nigga, that's Monica," right? So that's where the name of that album comes from, um, and yeah, it might be from a French dude, but the album, I don't listen to R&B, not because I don't like R&B, it's like, to me, all the art there's, like so this generation, there's an argument that this generation probably knows music better than, any other generation. There's a lot of people who think that this generation makes terrible music, and I have a theory about that. Because this is generation, like, when you and I and everybody else was growing up, we used to listen to the music of our era. We would go to the store, buy an album, the hot album, right? That's what you could buy in a store, and listen to it. But because of, like, streaming, they have access to all the music essentially that's ever been made. So what you gonna make? Right? Like, if you can listen to all of the music that's ever been made, you can listen to James Brown, and you can listen to Earth, Wind and Fire and the Gap Band and KRS-One and, Run DMC and Public Enemy. Like, what are you going to make? You gotta make if you're gonna make something different, it's gotta be shitty because all the great music has really been made, and, right, like, w before, I'm gonna say 1990, it was really expensive to buy music equipment, even if you were in hip hop, right, to buy turntables and a beat machine and a drum machine and all that, and before then, you had to learn how to play the guitar or the drums or the keyboards or some instrument. Now you can just get a computer, right? You don't have to create or learn or study an instrument for years before you go into a studio and get signed by a label and do talent shows and local shows. You can just like sit in your room, listen to all the music that ever existed, and make music. And at the beginning, all artists, like, if you listen to music, probably listen to some Prince albums from when he was 14, it was probably shitty, right? But as he grew and became an artist and a well-known artist, we only hear the good Prince. We don't hear the beginning of the Prince uh, era. Now we hearing the shitty music from the beginning of these people era. Like, there were people like, you'll see a video of a well-known musician or a rapper that say, "Yeah, I started rapping or I started making music when I was 21." And they'll say, "How old are you now?" "I'm 23." Like, they've been really doing this for 2 years. So we're hearing the early stage shitty music. And if they last long enough, maybe that music gets good, right? And I think that's the difference in these eras of music. It is that we have access to the shitty version of every artist, and they don't have to do shows to expose themselves to the world. So, back to Jack Harlow. So what should Jack Harlow do? Like, I have to be honest, right? I have heard a couple of Jack Harlow songs. Yeah, I don't know. People are saying, "Oh, this album is not good." I don't know if I've heard anything great from him. He was aight. And now he made another aight album, and it's R&B. But again, look, Jack Harlow is just starting really his music career. How old is Jack Harlow, by the way? Let's look and see. Let's see. Jack Harlow is 28 years old. Right, so he probably got some stuff under his belt, some time under his belt. It's not young, it's not old, right? He started making mixtapes in 2015, so he got a good 11, 10 years under his belt, right? And this is what it says on his Wikipedia page, so take it how you want to. Harlow and his friend Copeland Garvey used a Guitar Hero microphone and a laptop to record rhymes and songs. They made a CD, Rippin' and Rappin', and sold copies at their school, Highland Middle School, when in the 7th grade. So that's what we're hearing, right? The early we got he was able to sell like the shitty 6th grade version of Jack Harlow. Maybe we just hearing the 12th grade version of Jack Harlow. I don't know. But I'm not mad at, like, I think the memes were funny. If you hadn't seen the memes, if you're not on social media that much, he took a picture of himself in one of those like Donny Hathaway rerun hats, and the people started making names for him. My favorite was from one of my friends, Rod, the Black Guy Who Tips podcast, who is, by the way, who has the longest running black podcast um, on the internet. And he's called him Music Stove Child, which was hilarious to me. Um, I call him Rachel Dolezal, be sure, which I thought was funny. But just if you want to get a good laugh, go look at some of the names that people came up from with for Jack Harlow. And I don't like Eddie B says she never heard of Jack Harlow, but I'm doubtful. Don't worry about it. Like you're not missing anything, but he ain't bad, right? It's perfectly fine. Like um, sometimes things are just not for you. Redman said he seems like another culture vulture. He going down with blackness now, but he'll go back to white people shortly. And that's hard for me, right? Because here's the thing, right? If he truly likes black music and then truly enjoys it and that's what he wants to make, what else is he supposed to say? But like, yeah, I like black music, right? And but the thing is, all the other culture vultures have said that, so it's right to be doubtful of him. It's not wrong, but I think he said what he genuinely meant. He liked black music. Now, it that doesn't mean he won't do what Post Malone and all the other people did, right? Because I mean, when you have that option, why would you turn it down? Like a lot of us in here didn't know what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives when we were like 24, 25, right? So people change paths, right? Like he might realize, oh, I really like country music, and so he'll start making. He's from Kentucky. He's just a white boy from Kentucky. If he start making country music, now, then it wouldn't be like a stretch or out of his roots, right? He's from Louisville. So, and he was born and raised on a horse farm near Shelbyville. So that's his roots too. Maybe he want to explore his roots, right? Like a lot of people, black people, like get blacker as they age. Sammy D says, growing up in Knoxville, Tennessee in the 70s and the 80s, the only exposure I had to black music was from my friends playing it when I was with them. Even MTV only played commercial stuff. Yeah, in the 70s and the 80s, right? Like I think we first of all, we don't remember, like, there used to be black music radio stations, like, and especially in the South, one basically in every state in the big city. When I was growing up, the only station we had access to that played black music was the Big DM, and the Big DM was like an hour away in Columbia, and it would come in grainy sometimes. Sometimes it depending on what part of the house you were in and what the signal was doing that day, you could get a good listen to the Big DM. Um, KGM says, "What are his politics?" I don't care. Like, I don't necessarily care about a rapper or anybody who is a non-politician's politics. I think we get exposed to the internet so often that we have to hear what, like, a rapper or a actor says. I don't give a like, I kinda don't care what a regular old white boy from Kentucky's politics are. Like, I have no interest in it. Because even if let's say he's liberal, I mean, what does that mean? He probably still don't know shit about politics. He is a rapper. And yes, Stephanie, I see it. A musician should be able to make any music they like. Um, this sounds she says, "Shouldn't a musician should be able to make any music they like? Why would the origin of the genre be the issue? This sounds like black artists shouldn't be allowed to play classical music." I hope that's not what you're saying. I don't know if you got here, but I don't think that's what anybody is saying. I don't think that anybody is even critiquing Jack Harlow for making black music. The joke is, or the critique is, that he said he got blacker. I got blacker. Like, not the music. The He said I got blacker. And as far as the music is concerned, like, I think this is an example of when, like, there's this thing like, well, what if a black person said, what if a white person said that? I think here's the difference, right? Shouldn't a musician be able to make anything music they like? Why would the origin of the genre be the issue? We wrote about strawman this week, and this is a good example, right? So, one, nobody is saying that, and two, here's the thing, right? When you ask that question, we also have to acknowledge in the answer, in contemplating it, that there is a history of white people coming into black music, stealing the sound, stealing the music, and not acknowledging where it came from. There is a history of white artists being able to make the same kind of music that black artists make and be catapulted into stardom just because they white, right? Like, Jack Harlow is probably like the 14th best rapper from Louisville, Kentucky. How many other rappers do you know from Louisville, though? How many black ones? Right? That's the point, right? And I think in talking about that thing, we have to acknowledge that. And you have to acknowledge that because that has happened from everybody from the Rolling Stones, who call themselves a blues band, to the Beatles, to Johnny Cash, to, all throughout history. You have to acknowledge like, there could be some resentment because of that, right? Like, when you see Ray Charles says, them Beatles, they really couldn't play no music to me. They really wasn't good guitarists or good musicians. They was just some white boys who sound good. Like, Ray Charles has that critique. Prince had that critique, right? Like, that critique existed because when you're out there grinding, especially in the music industry, when it kind of takes a stroke of lightning to become a star anyway, and you see, again, I mean, I wasn't even making a racial critique earlier when I was saying it. He aight, right? And we sitting here talking about a aight rapper. Why? You can't divorce his race from that. So nobody's saying that he shouldn't be able to rap. I think the question is, right, when you are a rapper or in a genre that is predominantly black, what is what responsibility do you have to make sure that you know your place? Like, a lot of times, man, people get so comfortable, like, g again, they start fixing Kool-Aid out of your refrigerator, right? They go into you like, a lot of times, white people who are surrounded by black people get so comfortable that uh, back to the politics thing, right? Even though we don't care about their politics, they think that they can start making jokes like Monica or my nigga. Now, let's say that that's not what Monica means, right? That's the It's not that joke, which I mean, it's really hard to kind of believe that it's not what he means when he named the album Monica. But let's say it's not, right? Why you ain't got no black people around you to say, man, you might want to change that name. Like, why don't you call it like Keisha or Cheryl or something like that? Um, so I think that is the thing, right? Like when you have all of these signifiers, you can't you have to understand that black people gonna be like, I don't know about this motherfucker, right? Like he got the Monica joke, he got that little hat on, like he's signifying blackness. Like, I don't know about him, right? Because he's doing the stuff that all the white thieves have done. And we can't sit here and have this conversation and not pretend that the white thieves didn't exist, right? And so I think that's a vital part of the conversation. Um, yeah, one thing Omar Moore says, one thing about the Rolling Stones is at least they give credit to black artists and invite them on stage and tour with them. Yeah, and I saw so in researching the story of Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Y'all don't know If y'all don't know, Sister Rosetta Tharpe is literally the woman. Like you can trace back rock and roll back to one woman, Sister Rosetta Tharpe. So she was raised in this apostolic church in Arkansas, moved to Chicago, and she was like a guitar, genius essentially. And you could hear her riffs like in Prince's riffs. And she mixed gospel and this crazy guitar playing that was like blues tinged, but not blues tinged. And essentially, that's what became rock and roll. So there's a writer from the Rolling Stone goes to see her when she plays in New York. And he says, I've never heard anything like it. She was rocking and rolling. That's where the name rock and roll comes from. Like the first time that phrase was ever mentioned was used to describe Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And so essentially, no one's saying like everybody who plays rock and roll stole it from her. But when Sister Rosetta Tharpe, she was not really that famous because at once white people started stealing her music. So she goes on this tour to Britain, well, all across Europe, but she stops in Britain, and a bunch of people from like this small town outside of London go to hear her. And they didn't have a car, right? And there was like 10 of them. So they ride together. They rent a bus and ride together. And those people eventually became The Who and the Rolling Stones, two of the greatest rock bands in history. The reason, like, they give credit, right? They don't even pretend, right? Like, oh yeah, we saw Sister Rosetta Tharpe and start making our music different. And so you can trace the lineage. And the thing about them is oftentimes it's not necessarily the individual musicians who don't give credit. It's the larger world in retrospect, right? It's the fans of the musicians who say, nah, they did that by themselves because they're such a fan of the Who. They don't want to acknowledge the Rolling Stones. But Sister Rosetta Tharpe would say that, "Oh, I understand what they're doing," right? Like, if you lived in London in 1956, you ain't hearing, like, a bunch of American you stealing or adapting or co-opting American music, and all of that is black, so you understand that you are playing black music, and so they never actually kind of had any animosity against the British musicians who would come over here and play versions of black music. But they did have animosity about the artists who were in America. They'd be on a show with them, and all of a sudden, the artist got their song is making their song a hit song. Big Mama Thornton was mad that Elvis was playing "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." So that is the difference, right? So no one is saying, well, white people shouldn't be able to make whatever kind of music that they make. Everybody should be able to make whatever kind of music that they make. And everybody should acknowledge where they got the music from. And everybody should do it. But some of them be stealing. We got to acknowledge that. Some of them motherfuckers be stealing, right? Some of them co-opted black music and some of them just ripped it off altogether and said, it's mine now. That's the difference. And we can't even have this conversation without acknowledging that. Right. So I think that is an important way framework to understand this conversation, right? Like you can't divorce what's happening now from history and all the shit that's happened before you walked into the room, right? Back to the original thing we said this morning. Like some people don't say, hey, when they walk into the room, like they didn't sleep with you, like they slept with you last night. So I think that is what this conversation is about, not whether white people should be able to make black music. And Bo Diddley said outright that Elvis stole black music. Yeah, not well. So here's the thing, right? What is stealing, right? There is borrowing ideas and stealing. And I think where this conversation sometimes goes awry is that I don't think sometimes white people know they would be stealing. Right? So take the blues, for instance, right? And which is one of the foundational forms of music, one of the foundational genres for rock and roll, for everything, right? Blues artists would sing each other's songs all the time, right? Like if Bo Diddley was in Memphis and, another blues artist was in Chicago, they might say, he got an old Bo Diddley song. Sometimes they wouldn't even know whose song it was, right? Because just because you heard this person playing it doesn't mean it was theirs. They might have heard it. And musicians shared, especially blues musicians, they shared stuff like that all of the time, right? And they didn't even ask each other permission. There was because a lot of that music comes from black culture and large, right? So when the white people show up and do it, they're doing what the musicians in their genre do until you go into the studio, record it, put your name on it, and say, I wrote it. And then you get royalties for the rest of your life. Now, for most of those blues musicians, they weren't doing that, right? If you look at all of those old blues records, they really, one of the reasons they don't get royalties is because they didn't have like the tradition of like saying, I wrote this. They were saying, this is a blues song, I'm gonna sing it, and I'm gonna get paid for singing it. Right. And then so a lot of times many of those records wouldn't even be attributed to the writer. One of the things that we don't acknowledge, when we talk to those old blues players, they'll say, like, the arrangers of those albums, usually white, they stole a bunch of music, not from them, but, like, these songs that just exist in the culture, and white folks perpetually get an income, like generational wealth for these songs. Like, somebody, again, like, take for instance today, right? Um, like, there's an old black song, "Your mama, your daddy, your greasy greasy grandmammy." If a white person, like, I don't know if I've ever heard that on a song, right? But if somebody said, "Hey, I heard this thing, now Imma put it in the record," they technically get credit for writing that, and that could bring generational wealth. Well, not only do they get that wealth, but if you say it, you gotta pay them, right? So, that kind of thievery, like, you have to acknowledge that they capitalize off this black creativity, right? There's a story, when I was working on High Horse, and we recorded an entire, again, there's so much footage that you guys didn't see. So we talked about this thing called the $1,000,000 session. So one day, Johnny Cash, was in Memphis, and the and I'm gonna look it up right now so I won't get any of the facts wrong because um it's a session that um launched like most of these people's career, right? So one day they were just in Sun Record Studio in Memphis, Tennessee, and which is kind of like the heart of black music then, right? This was in December 4th, 1956, right? And a dude walks in. Let's see, a little young dude. And he sees a dude on the piano, and there's another dude playing the guitar, and there's another dude playing the guitar. And it was like, let's, just hang out and record some songs. And that became the $1,000,000 session, right? The engineer and recording producer of that, Sam Phillips, records them, right? So those four people were Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash. They become huge superstars, right? Perkins, like if you never heard of Perkins, he was the star. Like he was the one who was having the recording session. He was the star. Like none of those other people, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, they were nobody really knew him. Perkins had a song that was already a hit called Blue Suede Shoes. Again, right? Like this is the culture that they grew up in, right? So they recorded like 20 something songs. Uh I'm looking at the list now, right? It's 20 something songs. Almost all of those songs are credited to like white people or them. But now we know like a quarter of the songs that they recorded, first of all, all a quarter of them were Sister Rosetta Tharpe songs. Again, and like three quarters of them were originally written by black artists. The white dudes got the credit, right? Um, one was like the only white songs was Jingle Bell, White Christmas, uh, and they eventually gave like half of the credit to the black dude, but like some of the lyrics for "Don't Be Cruel" um, was kind of written by the white dude, and like the rest of them were black songs. Like for instance, right? they got they gave a white man credit for writing "When the Saints Go Marching In," right? Well, that session launched their career, but the thing about that session also is that the guy who owns Sun Records, the guy who was, uh, you know, the recording engineer, Sam Phillips, he is called, and this is like he was the first of all, he was in the first class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This man, Sam Phillips, and his nickname is the man who invented rock and roll. Again, this is the thing that we're talking about when we're talking about Jack Harlow, right? You can't divorce that. Again, this whole genre, one of the first country superstars, one of the hugest country superstars, like Johnny Cash, right? At the time, was married to a black woman. And again, all of this becomes part of the narrative, part of the stuff that all these black people know. Just think about all of those black artists in Memphis who heard those songs and were like, "Wait, who they say wrote that?" Because I m started recording that song first, right? And so that's how we have to understand, like, the stuff that is happening now doesn't happen in a vacuum. And when, people roll their eyes and say, "Why y'all always bringing up this old stuff?" This is why, because it relates to today, right? That $1,000,000 session is important to music today. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, again, Sam Phillips is called the man who invented rock and roll, is in the first class of the first inductees of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Sister Rosetta Tharpe got inducted in like 2013. The woman who actually invented it, right? So we gotta acknowledge this stuff. Like this is like nobody is trying to take credit or dismiss or saying like white people shouldn't be making our kind of music, right? What they're saying is like acknowledge it, know your place, and you have to be cognizant to know your place, to know your role is to be cognizant of all of those people and all of that stuff that happened before you. And that's the important part, right? Like that's what we're talking about. Oh, y'all talking about I'm scrolling through the comments now. They talking about Eric Clapton. Um and yeah, like Derek said, what if it worked the other way? Somebody asked, where's the money? Where's the payback? Kanye uplifted Taylor Swift and now she overshadows Beyonce and worth. What if it worked the other way? Had a friend plagiarize my thoughts or I was amused. People be plagiarizing, right? Like people be stealing, man. Like there's no other way to put it, right? And I'm not saying that that Jack Harlow be stealing, right? Or is a thief. But you have to understand, right? Like let's say you had a store and your store sold songs, right? And people come in there and buy songs and you play them and they leave and that was the end of the transaction. But sometimes every now and then a white dude comes in there into the store, buys a song, but when he leaves, you don't realize it. You find out that, oh, he had a tape recorder in his pocket, right? Everybody else is coming there to listen to the song. And some people are coming there to steal songs. And not only to steal songs, right? One day you're in another town or you're across town and you see a huge building with a big sign that says Song Walmart. And you go in, and it's all the songs that you were playing, reproduced in slick packaging and selling for a higher price. And Song Walmart is filled with customers. And under the sign of Song Walmart, it says Superstore, the first of its kind. No one else sells songs but Song Walmart. Would you would you be suspicious when more white people came into your little store? Right? That's what we have to understand. That's what we're talking about. Um, and so when we're talking about this, when we're talking about anything really, we can't divorce the history of what happened before it and just pretend that, oh, Jack Harlow or Donald Trump or anybody else exists in a box. Um, yeah, Eddie B says Miles and them, yes, Coltrane and Miles together on many collaborations, including Davis's Kind of the Blue. Like it's always wild to hear about these great jazz artists and then listen to another great jazz artist album and then you realize, oh yeah, that was just like Miles Davis or John Coltrane just, you know, sitting in the back. Right. Um, there's this great quote by Miles Davis. What he was talking to someone and they were saying like, does he feel like being black, right? And the struggle of being black is informed his music, is why his music sounds the way it was like, what the fuck you talking about? Like my daddy was rich and my mama was good looking. Like Miles Davis' dad was like, I think a dentist or something like that, or a doctor. Miles Davis say, my daddy was rich and my mom was good looking. Like it ain't no struggle in my music. It's the black part. And sometimes we kind of conflate the two things, right? Is that we think like we associate like the black part, the blues part with the struggle. Well, the blues was largely celebratory, right? And it ain't just the struggle that makes it black. Like we always kind of talk about like underprivileged kids or, you know, underserved communities, right? That ain't all it's about being black. Again, when I tell like if you notice when I tell a story about growing up or tell a story about my family or tell stories in general, they're not about like we were so hungry and we was in the store with food stamps buying government cheese. Nah. That ain't I mean, I grew up poor and I ate government cheese, but that is not the totality of my growing up. My growing up was my sister with those patent leather shoes. My growing up was laughing with my neighbors. My growing up was like, so I used to have to take piano lessons. And my mom's friend, Miss Douglas, I wrote about this a few years ago. She taught me piano lessons. But we didn't have no piano. But the lady down the street from me, Miss Addie, had a piano. Now, Miss Addie couldn't play piano. Nobody in Miss Addie's house played piano. So I used to have to go there, and Miss Addie would make me just sit down there and play the piano at her house. And they had a parrot, and I would have to practice the piano for Miss Addie's parrot for like an hour, like twice a week. Just play for the parrot. Like that wasn't a struggle, right? Like, now, of course, I could have made that story about, you know, my mom couldn't afford a piano, so I used to have to go down the street to my neighbor's house, and they knew that I was a poor, underprivileged kid, so she would graciously let me in and allow me to play the piano. That ain't how I saw it, though, right? Now, somebody looking from the outside would make that story about this poor, underprivileged black kid who couldn't afford a piano but loved music so much that his whole neighborhood came together and united to give him the opportunity to learn where middle C was, right? But that's not the world I lived in, right? That's a manufactured world by people who want to tell black stories in the way that they tell black stories, right? I was just at the house playing for the parent, right? What I remember is like Miss Addie. First of all, it was like the first time I ever smelled bacon because my family didn't eat pork. And I remember Miss Addie cooking bacon while I played the piano for the parrot, right? And again, the way the narrative is constructed about black people is interesting because there is people who are going to say, you know, when you remember when the black people were mad about Jack Harlow because it was a white boy and they were hating on his success, and that's not what happened, right? You know, or they were complaining about white people stealing black people music, and that's not what happened, right? Nobody was paying attention to Black Harlow, and he, out of nowhere, was saying with some white people, I got blacker. My music be black, right? Nobody was fucking with that dude. He could have just kept rapping. He could have said hello when he walked into the room, and nobody would have said anything to him. He could have just made the music that he wants to make. None of this shit is on black folks, right? So I don't even want to be included in that narrative, right? He said some shit publicly, recorded it, put it on the internet, and now we gotta talk about like, why y'all hating on Jack Harlow? Shouldn't he be able to play whatever kind of music he wants to play? Nobody would have said that shit if Jack Harlow would have just made black music and made whatever music he likes. Because again, he was making music and nobody was fucking with him. The people who liked it bought it. He was able to sustain himself. And he made himself. Now, I'm not even going to say a target because he centered himself in a conversation and race about black music, about music, when he could have just said, you know what, man? Like, this is what I would have said if I was a white boy. Hey, look, man, I love music. Now, in loving music and listening to music for years, I realized like sh- if I was going to make music, it was probably going to be black music. Because, I mean, what else was I going to play? Like Bach? Was I going to be a, a punk musician? Nah. I mean, all the music that I hear on the radio, all the music that I hear on Spotify was black growing up. And I started making the music that I liked and the music that I listened to. And I hope that I'll be able to do that for the rest of my career. And if you think it's black music, cool. It's just, to me, it's just the music that Jack Harlow likes and the music that Jack Harlow makes. And maybe one day it's possible that I'll make a different kind of music. But you can probably be sure that if I'm in America, probably gonna have its roots in black music anyway. I wouldn't know how to make anything else because I've never heard or studied or learned any other kind of music, and that would have been gone. Instead, he said, I got blacker, and that's the point. That's the point. Like, you know what Mick Jagger and all of them other people said? "Yeah, I heard. I like the blues, and I played the blues. I make music. I like that American music, and I came to America and made some more music, and that was it." So again, that's the thing I love about history because and journalism too, right? Is because when you're telling these stories, right, you can tell if you were writing something in the New York Times about this whole story, you could start with the beginning of that Jack Harlow conversation and talk about the memes and the tweets, and it would look like, you know what? Jack Harlow said something and he hurt himself. And I don't even blame it on Jack Harlow, right? Jack Harlow probably just made a bad calculation or a technical error in how he said it, right? Because it probably won't change how he makes music. But a really, a really accurate, a really faithful encapsulation of that story would say white people stole some music from black people in the 1930s and called it jazz. Y'all know that name. Like originally, black those black musicians hated the name jazz. That was a white word. And then some white people, and again, the original artists acknowledged that they heard some white music. The guy who is called the father of country music worked on the railroad. He was a gandy dancer, which was the people who hammered in railroad ties and worked on the railroad. He was a poor white dude. He was a gandy dancer, and he was the only white gandy dancer, and he learned the blues from the fellow gandy dancers. So they had to work in rhythm, hammering these and putting down these tracks. So they would call out cadences. That's how he learned the blues. But he couldn't do it exactly like how they did it. So that became country music. Now, he acknowledged that I got it from the Gandy dancers. None of this is my stuff, right? Like even the yodel was a yell that he was trying to make to mimic the train whistle. The rest of the people said, nah, he made that up himself. And then the Carters come around, the first family of country music. They travel around with this black guy all across this country, and they call him the human tape recorder. And he taught them these songs, and they literally trade him. Is wild, right? Like he had one leg. So they said, we'll buy you a leg if you teach us these songs. And they buy him a wooden leg and he teaches them songs. And June Carter and the Carters become the first family of country music. And then Rosetta Tharpe. And then, you know, all of those blues musicians and all of those black musicians and, Motown, all those songs that were stolen from the early R&B singers. And then in 2026, Jack Harlow sits down in a room and says a dumb thing. and everybody gave him the side eye because of Rosetta Tharpe, because of the Gandy dances, because of country music, because of the blues, because of jazz. Not just because of what Jack Harlow said, sitting with some white boys from the New York Times. And that's how history works, and that's how stories are told. So, anyway, it's we've been here for an hour, but I wanna thank you guys for coming. Hey, don't forget, if you're here, send a question. If you got a question, like, if it's just any time in the week, right? Just send a question on Substack, and then we'll probably get to it on Friday because there's some I didn't get to today. Um, don't forget to do that. Don't forget to tell a friend about, Contraband Camp, and we'll see you in camp.